All right, let's get right into it. You know, at the very heart of the Jewish faith, there's this one single prayer. It's so central, so fundamental, that it's recited twice a day, every day. And it all starts with just one word. But believe it or not, that one word, well, it unlocks an entire worldview. So today, we're going to unpack the Shema. So, to really wrap our heads around the Shema, we actually have to go way back to the two ancient civilizations that pretty much shaped the entire Western world. So on one hand, you've got ancient Greece. These guys were all about the eye. You know, seeing is believing. They gave us these incredible sculptures, amazing theaters. Their whole world was visual. But then you have ancient Israel, which was, well, it was completely different. It was a culture of the ear. You see, the God of Israel was invisible, totally beyond the natural world, which meant you couldn't see him. You couldn't make an image of him. So how did he reveal himself? Through speech. Only through speech. It's like the historian Hans Kohn put it. The most important religious act wasn't to see God, it was to hear God. Faith came from tuning in and listening to that still small voice. And that brings us to a really simple but incredibly powerful conclusion, right? If God is a voice, something we hear, then what's the most important thing we can possibly do? Well, it's to listen. And the Hebrew word for listen is Shema. And this isn't just any word. It's pretty much the keyword of Judaism. So let's really dig into what that means. What does it look like to build an entire faith around this one concept, a culture of the ear? Okay, so you've got the Torah, right? The foundational text. And among other things, it is a book of law. And I'm not talking about just a few rules. We're talking 613 distinct commandments. It's this incredibly detailed guide for living, covering, well, just about everything, from ethics to daily rituals. Which, of course, leads to a pretty logical question, doesn't it? I mean, if you've got a religion with 613 laws you have to follow, there has to be a word for obey, right? It seems like it would be the single most important verb in the entire language. But, and this is where it gets absolutely mind-blowing, biblical Hebrew has no word that means to obey. None. It just isn't there. Get this. When modern Hebrew needed a word for, military commands, they actually had to borrow one from Aramaic. That's how absent the concept was. So what in the world does that mean? What does this missing word tell us? And if they don't use obey, what word do they use instead? Well, instead of a word for obey, the Torah uses, you guessed it, Shema. And this word is everywhere. I mean, it shows up a staggering 92 times just in the book of Deuteronomy alone. So this isn't some random substitute. It's a very deliberate, very profound choice. But here's the thing. Shema doesn't just mean listen in a simple way. Not at all. It's this incredibly rich, complex word. It's almost untranslatable, really. It's less of a command and more of a whole process. So, let's break it down. You could say Shema has at least 5 different layers to it. It starts simple, the physical act of hearing, letting the sound waves hit your ears. But then it gets deeper. It means to really listen with focused attention, and then to understand what's being said, then to internalize it, to really take it to heart. And only then, after all that, does it mean to respond, to act on what you've heard. And this is it's such a brilliant insight into the whole worldview. The fact that there's no word for obey, but there is this rich word Shema. It tells you everything. It tells you that this faith doesn't value blind, unthinking, unquestioning obedience. God isn't some dictator in the sky demanding you just fall in line. No. The idea is that God wants engagement. He wants understanding. He wants a commitment that actually comes from your heart. This whole idea of deep, active listening, it's so foundational, it literally becomes the bedrock of Jewish identity. And it's all captured in this one single powerful prayer that's just woven into the very fabric of daily life. Think about this. According to Jewish law, the Shema prayer has to be recited twice, every single day. It literally frames your day when you wake up and before you go to sleep. It's this constant call to listen, to understand, and to connect. It's a pillar of daily spiritual life, for sure. And the true power of this prayer as an anchor of identity, it really comes through in the absolute darkest of times. This quote here, it's from a child in the Warsaw Children's Hospital during the Holocaust. For him, reciting the Shema was this profound declaration of life, right in the face of death. It was the one thing he had left. And here's another incredible story just like it. After the war, when rescuers were searching for Jewish children who had been hidden away in monasteries, they would use the Shema as a kind of call sign. They'd walk in and recite the first line because that was often the only thing that could unlock a hidden identity, the only way to offer these kids a path back to who they were. I mean, what these stories show so powerfully is that the Shema is so much more than just a prayer. It's the ultimate symbol of Jewish courage, of commitment, of identity. It's the very last thing to be forgotten, like an afterimage burned into a person's memory. Okay, so for our last point, let's look at how this one little word, Shema, helps solve what can feel like a huge tension, a tension you find at the heart of almost any religion, the clash between rigid law and personal spirituality. So on one side, you have law. In Judaism, that's the halacha. It's objective, it's structured, it demands discipline. But then on the other side, you have spirituality, and that's subjective. It's spontaneous. It's all about what comes from inside you. You know, they can really feel like polar opposites. But the Jewish tradition says, nope, you need both. Spirituality on its own, without any structure, it can just dissolve into chaos. But law by itself, without any soul or spirit, well, that just becomes a lifeless corpse. So the goal isn't to pick a side. It's to find this amazing creative balance where each one actually makes the other stronger. And this is where the Shema comes in. It's the perfect example of this balance in action. Because think about it, it's a legal requirement, right? A structured, objective thing you have to do. But at the same time, it's this incredibly profound spiritual meditation on listening, on unity, and on love. And you can see this built right into the prayer itself. The call to Shema, to listen, that's not the end of the story. It immediately flows into the next part, and you shall love. And then right after that, and you shall teach them to your children. It's a chain reaction. Listening leads to love, and love leads to action. So when you boil it all down, the Shema is not some command you're meant to obey blindly. Not at all. It's a daily invitation. It's an invitation to pay attention, to really grapple with big ideas, to internalize what's true, and to commit your entire self, your heart, your actions, to living a life of purpose. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. In our world today, which is so visual, all about images and what we see, what changes? What changes for us personally, for our communities, for how we even understand the world, if we decide to build our foundation not on what we see, but on how deeply and how actively we are willing to